Hello, and welcome to the Common Geeking Program, ladies and gentlemen. We are a book club podcast where each week, three of us will read up on a topic and then discuss it from our own geeky and nerdy perspectives. This week, I'm your host. My name is Jeff, and we've got kind of a special episode here. Once a cycle, at the very beginning, we like to do our listener pick topic and theme. So we have like a raffle going on in each cycle, which I'll explain later. And the winner of which gets to pick the topic for a future episode, and this is the result of one of those. The listener who submitted this topic is Samuel Thang, or I guess just Sam Thang. I don't know. I don't know their full name. I'm sorry if I assumed you're Ul. You could just be a Sam. Could even be a Samantha. No, I don't think so. I think it's Samuel. I think there was something said about that in the last Common Briefing Program episode from last cycle. But the topic that was submitted is Dota 2. And a full fucking disclaimer right now, I am actually probably the least gamery person on the Common Geeking Program, save for maybe Johnavy. So this is a real rough one for me, because Dota 2 is a video game, and we'll talk about what exactly it is in a little bit. But just wanted to throw that out there that we might not be getting the most informed discussion out of my hosting this episode, but you know what? I was up for the challenge, and that's where we're at. So I'm joined by two people. Fucking, who are you? Let's go.
Hi. I'm Taeemul, or Chowdhury, whichever you prefer. And, I don't know shit about Dota. Even after playing it, I don't know shit. I suck at MOBAs. I'm not gonna be contributing to the MOBA discussion too much here.
It's okay. We'll figure this shit out. What are you repping today, Chowder, my boy?
I'm repping Overwatch.
That makes sense.
Oh, hello everyone. I'm Ryan, and I think like everybody else, well, I'm definitely not a fan of Dota. But
you know it better than us.
But I guess I had the pleasure of playing a few more games than everybody else. I guess I could count the number of games I've done on like one hand. But so I guess I was more or less the guide into the heart of darkness, if you will, of
the heart of dankness, if you will,
the heart of dankness, as it was dubbed. But I'm repping for this go-around Vermintide 2.
I don't know what that is, but I'll find out.
I mean, I assume it's a game about, like, tidal waves comprised solely of rats.
You're mostly right. But yes, and I'm trying to kind of maybe angle this toward, instead of the toxic way of gaming, to more of a positive community gaming experience.
Right, which segues me into something that I should have said before, but the theme of this episode is going to be kind of about toxic gaming and how pretty intense fandoms can make games kind of difficult for new players to join. Generally, we'll see where it goes, but that's the game plan from the beginning here. We're going to be starting by summarizing our topic and the domains, and then we're going to be openly discussing, and then finally, we'll close with a competitive rating section to determine who best contributed to this fun little discussion we're having here and whether or not today's topic was enjoyable. Spoiler alert, it wasn't.
Hopefully a large chunk of our listeners aren't just like die-hard Dota 2 fans. Because I feel like this is going to be a little jolting to hear three people that don't really care about it that much.
Yeah. All right, boys. We're going to be moving on to the summary. So first, let's start with a little history of Dota 2 and what it is. Fun fact: there isn't a Dota 1 proper.
It's a bit like Team Fortress 2. There isn't really a Team Fortress 1.
Yeah, so Dota 1, or Defense of the Ancients, as the acronym stands for.
Oh, that's what it stands for.
Yeah, that's what it stands for. Although I think that Dota 2 is actually just Dota 2. I don't think it stands for Defense of... Well, I mean, it does originally stand for Defense of the Ancients, but it's not called Defense of the Ancients. It's called Dota 2. So the original Dota was a, mod for Warcraft 3, Reign of Chaos, and it was made by community members, as I understand it. I don't know a whole lot about that, but basically it was taking parts of the game and modding it into what Dota 2 is, and that is a MOBA, or multiplayer online battle arena game. We should probably explain what that is a little bit more in depth. You guys, I'm going to try my very cursory knowledge of explaining what MOBA is, and then hopefully you guys will be able to fill in some of the gaps here. So a MOBA, or multiplayer online battle arena, as I just said, is a type of like strategic team game where several people will be on 2 different teams. In the case of Dota 2, I think they're teams of 5 generally. Is that right?
Yeah, it's 5 generally, but there's supposedly a quicker version that is 3-on-3.
Oh, okay.
Or at least I know League does that.
Right.
3-on-3.
Yeah, I don't. Yeah, League of Legends is the other most like the Dota or the MOBA that I know the most about. So perhaps that means it's also the most well known. But so if you know anything about League of Legends, then that's what a MOBA is. And if you don't know anything about League of Legends, then I envy you. So basically, you got teams of 5, and there's usually you each control an individual character or a hero, as they're called in the case of Dota 2. And the heroes will kind of level up throughout the portion of the game, and you use those characters to kind of fight each other, and then usually the big objective is to destroy a structure in the enemy's base, which is like on the other map. There's like 3 lanes in the map usually, and then there's people whose job it is to like go between them, and those are called junglers? Question mark? Is that correct?
Yes, there's like an area of the game called the jungle where people go in there, beat up a bunch of monsters, level up really fast, and then basically go into whatever lane needs them and kick ass.
Yeah, so that's the other thing, is that there are these computer-controlled minions, monsters that you have to fight, and you have to like destroy these certain towers along the way. Whose audio is that noise coming from? That banging?
Sorry, my girlfriend's making dinner.
With a hammer?
Kinda.
That's right. But yeah, that is my cursory understanding of MOBAs. So basically, it's an online multiplayer game. When talking about Dota specifically, it's sold on Steam. It's free to play, quote unquote free, because it's fucking 20 gigabytes. Like, what is that shit? I don't know. You guys wanna jump in here and help me explain some of the finer bits of Dota? Looking at you, Ryan. I can continue if you'd like me to, but that is I don't want to be going on by myself for too long here.
Really, it's a skill. It's a game of skill and a little bit of luck. What often happens,
and strategy, like cooperating with the team, and like
it's set up heavily towards people that tend to play in groups together.
Right.
And it also kind of skews towards people that are very much into the game. So if you're not really into the game, I think it's one of the reasons we're kind of talking about the toxicity of it, is if you are a casual person that is just playing for the fun of it, you are not going to be in like this kind of crazy headspace that a lot of these people are, where they're getting really frustrated, but they're also like super into the game, and they are looking up strategies for all of these characters, and they are looking up perfect routes for like I was playing with some friends not too long ago when they were trying to get me into the game, and like they had very specific things like, oh, you have to place, like you need to be traveling these routes within the first like few minutes of the game. You need to be collecting this like bounty over here so you can get a little bit of money to the start so you can start building some other stuff and building up your gear. And like they had kind of these things like timed out almost by the minute of what I should be doing. I should be placing
That's crazy.
Things that kind of give vision on the field. I can't remember what they're called. But like you have to do all these things and have to be very specific. And if you don't do that, it's all your fault. And so there's a lot of pressure, and especially if you're playing with other people that are really into it against people that are really into it, and you're the one casual guy, for whatever reason, even though everybody knows you're casual, you will be the team's downfall. And I mean, you kind of are, because if you're the only person that's not 100% into it, like pounding on the table every time you die, you are a liability to the team. And then the kind of form, just because also the matches take like 40 minutes.
Yeah.
Like a good match will take 40 minutes. People have a lot of time put into it, and they have a lot of pride put into it. So when you lose, people get, especially if you're not playing with your friends, you're just playing with like linked up strangers on the internet.
Yeah.
People get very frustrated and very angry very immediately.
You mentioned something that I want to touch a little bit more into. That's important to mention, I think, is that like the character selection is a big part of these types of games. Because like all of these characters have like these different niches and sort of strategies that go along with them. There's people who have different play styles that go into like different kinds of characters. Like you could be like a tanky bruiser, or you could be like a, you know, ranged damage person, or like a healer, or yada yada, etc., etc. And there's like, oh god, I want to say like at least 30 characters in this game, right?
Something like that.
I think there's more.
Yeah, but so that's another thing that can make it kind of intimidating for new players, is that like you don't really know what kind of strategy you're going for at the beginning, so like you don't have a lot to go off of when you're picking a character, which is just kind of the nature of like a game where you pick different characters. But I think that also speaks to like how the game is sort of designed for you to be working strategically with a group of people that you already kind of are acclimated with, because you probably want a certain team makeup to make you successful. And if you're playing with random strangers, then that kind of thing could be hard to coordinate, because like if you main one thing and someone else mains the same thing, then, you know, that could be like a frustrating thing, right? Like if you're trying to play the same type of character that someone else is trying to play, then you might not have the right sort of team composition. Yeah, I don't know. I just thought that's probably an important thing to mention. Trying to you know, paint the most well-rounded picture of what this game is from our experience. I guess I'll also mention that to research this topic, we got together and we played Dota 2. We were going to all
and when we say research,
yeah,
put that in quotes. Because I don't think we learned much.
No, yeah, it was...
We played for about 2 hours, I think.
One mechanic that, you know, irritated me a little bit is that every time you die in the game, your respawn time takes, like, longer and longer each time. So by the time that it got to the point in the game where it was, like, you know, like the half-hour mark, I was taking, like, a minute and a half to respawn. So that was, like, the majority of the game was respawn, take the time to walk to where I was before, get killed almost instantly, and then have to wait longer to respawn.
Yeah. You're supposed to teleport, but we didn't really get into that. But the timer thing, there's a reason for that. Because if people get angry while playing your game, so let's set up a scenario, and I'll use some of the lingo that the kids use today. Say that you are maining a DPS that requires a lot of gold.
Yeah.
So to get going, and this other carry, maybe an AD carry, is stealing all of your kills, which means he's getting the last hit or the final hit on somebody else and getting all the gold from killing them. What you might do to kind of like screw your teammates and prove how frustrated you are is just to run in and not fight back, basically doing what is called feeding. And when you feed, you're basically just running into, I mean, sometimes people do it on accident just because they're inexperienced, and that's why a lot of people get very angry at like inexperienced players.
Right.
But if you are pissed at your team and you don't like them anymore and you want the game to end, but you don't want to disconnect because they have certain policies about disconnecting, at least League of Legends did. You would just dive into the enemy and not fight back and die, and they would get gold. Dota's thing is kind of messing with the timer, so even if you do try to feed, you're heavily delayed if you're like constantly dying over.
No, the mechanic definitely makes sense, but as an inexperienced person, it was definitely very frustrating because it felt like the worse I was doing, the less and less practice I would be getting. And, you know, without any knowledge of, like, the controls or, like, what any of my abilities really did, I was pretty much guaranteed to die whenever I encountered another player, even though we were playing with relatively inexperienced people because of, like, the sort of ranking system that it was set up with. The combination of the fact that, you know, there's all these characters that you might not know immediately from starting, and there's also this fandom, which is in some cases encouraged by the mechanics of the game to sort of have like harbor resentment towards new players because they'll end up, you know, dragging down their scores, which you understand. Like I understand the way, like why people have those reactions. Because if you were someone who was like seriously into the game and there were like these inexperienced people coming on and basically like scrubbing your numbers because of it, like that would be a really frustrating thing. I think some of the issue is that, like, the overall, like, mechanics and nature of the setup sort of encourages that sort of resentment. So all these things kind of pull together to make this game very difficult to get into, as it's sort of very daunting. And, you know, I think it's also worth mentioning that the three of us, especially Chowdhury and I, we're not particularly going in with the expectation that this was going to be a fun thing that we'd be doing for the rest of our lives. It was definitely going in with like, oh, we have to do this. So, you know, we had some bias going on, and I'll acknowledge that. But
100%.
Yeah.
I mean, bias is not separate from anything we do, so. But,
yeah, no, that's true, but it's worth denoting.
Yeah.
And it's like, I had something I was going to say, but I don't remember what it was. So if either of you had something you were about to say, go ahead.
There's like a dude who's like a pangolin, but with a fencing sword, rapier, you know, and he talks with a posh accent.
Characters are cute in the game. A lot of cute characters.
But bullshit, they ugly. They ugly. Like,
yeah,
this game is
so
ugly.
cute.
We can
cute
talk
characters.
about that later. But anyway, so
Cute.
I remember what I was going to say. I was just going to say that we went to go play by ourselves, and we were originally going to play the three of us together in a game, but upon the revelation that the game takes up 20 gigabytes of storage, and the fact that I'm not a very gamery person, and I just have a fucking MacBook that at most usually has about 15 gigabytes available on it at any given time, I was not able to download the game, so we ended up having to... Chowder just came over to my house, and we switched back and forth between me and him playing. So, you know, it might have been a better experience for us if we had all three of us in the game at the same time. So,
I doubt it.
Yeah, I mean,
it would have definitely
slightly
made things interesting.
Yeah, because we are outnumbered. We wouldn't have been quite as outnumbered compared to.
You guys could have gotten straight up addicted to it.
Yeah, that's probably what would have happened. But I think that was mostly about as well-rounded a description of Dota as we're capable of giving. So I think with that, we should probably move on. All right, Chowder, my boy. So, you know, what are you talking about?
Yo.
You brought to the table, my boy.
So yeah, as I said, I'm talking about Overwatch. Overwatch is a multiplayer first-person shooter game made by Blizzard Entertainment. In the game, you are in teams of 6 people, and you select characters, and these characters have different archetypes. Offense, tank, support, what have you. Jeff is currently showing me his ugly-ass plushie right now.
It's beautiful. I love it. It's called a Fuggler. It's the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. It would only be more beautiful if the teeth were human.
Yeah, we actually did talk about Overwatch in a previous episode of...
I thought you were going to say you talked about Fugglers in a previous episode, and I was like, when?
We did talk about Overwatch in a previous Common Geeking Program episode. Yeah, it was about like the lore and story aspect of it and the characters, but here I'm just here to talk about the mechanics. The goal can vary depending on which map you're playing on. Like sometimes it's push the payload to a certain objective. Other times it's to defend a point from the enemy team or to capture a point from the enemy team, depending on whether you're playing offense or defense. And sometimes it's like a combination of both. Yeah, and, the game requires a lot of teamwork. It's actually very similar to MOBAs in that it's very reliant on teamwork and people, like, working together and strategizing and fulfilling what their archetype's job is to do. And it actually runs into similar problems of toxicity where you have players who, like, tilt and, like, just blame, like, certain members of their team. Players grant sense of...
Fucking Hanzo.
Hanzo.
Which one's Hanzo? Is Hanzo the dragon? That's not a dragon? Did I remember that correctly?
He's the archer man in a world full of guns. It doesn't make any sense.
Yes.
But he's
Mr.
a dragon.
Ryuga Wakateki no Kurao himself.
He's the good dragon who's not really a dragon, right?
No. That's Genji. You're thinking of Genji. Hanzo's the one who killed Genji.
He's the bad dragon, but he is a dragon, right? He's not a dragon, but he's a metaphorical dragon, right?
He is a Shamata of the Dragon Clan.
There you
Please.
go. Okay, so I listen. I've the only information I had about this character was from the skit, right? And we're talking about a world with talking gorillas and, like, fucking cyborgs and shit like that. And I was expected to understand that the dragon thing was a metaphor, but I thought they were just saying he was a literal dragon, and I was very confused by the fact that he wasn't a dragon anymore, and that was never explained. It was a whole thing in episode 12 of this podcast.
Go check it out. Don't worry, we'll wait. All right. Anyways, yeah, so Overwatch runs into some toxicity problems of people blaming others, people having a grand sense of self-importance, and thus dragging the team down.
I think that's kind of the nature with any, like, team-based online thing.
Yeah, you know, many of the same problems that you see in Dota 2, you'll see in Overwatch. But there are some things that Overwatch does do better. First of all, games in Overwatch are much shorter. They're like 10 to 15 minutes, so like
right.
There isn't as much writing on the line as if you're spending like an hour on each game, you know? You know, characters, when you like just quickly glance at them, you know exactly what they're about. A problem I had with Dota was like, I would look at the character and I wouldn't have a good sense on what they do. Like there was this dude with a big fuck-all spear, but then he turned out to like throw it instead of using it as a melee weapon. Like he used magic and shit, and his design didn't communicate that. This guy like named Pudge who has these giant knives, but turns out he's got like this chain
grappling hook, yeah.
Yeah.
Fucking Pudge. Pudge was our biggest antagonist. And
he was the bane of our existence for that.
But like in Overwatch, you look at a character and you get a very good sense of what they do. Like you see Reinhardt, he's a big dude with a big ass shield and a big ass hammer, and you know what he does, okay? He swings his hammer, he protects his people with his shield, and you see Roadhog, and he's got a giant hook. You know what that hook does? It hooks people in. It communicates, okay?
Yeah, that's fair.
That's definitely true.
And one thing they recently added, which I think has done a great job in curbing toxicity, is this endorsement mechanic where people can like give other players on their team or even the opposing team like medals for like sportsmanship or good teamwork, good gameplay or whatever. And
are they just cosmetic, or is it like a?
It gives you a little bit extra experience, and that experience is used to like get loot boxes, which gets you.
So it's basically rewarding you for not being a dickhead.
Yeah, exactly.
That's nice.
But like even despite all that, there's still a toxicity problem in Overwatch, and you know a lot of it has to do with misogyny and racism and shit. So you know,
misogyny, racism
in video games?
You're crazy.
What are you talking about, Chowdhury?
Like general online harassment. And so when I chose Overwatch, my thought was, A, it's one of the few multiplayer games I play, so it's one of the few things that relate to this. But B, because I think Overwatch does a lot to like try to curb toxicity, but there's still a lot to go, and it's something that like they're going to need to figure out what to do about that. Otherwise, it's just going to turn into an unpleasant experience, like Dota.
Yeah.
Well,
I think it also kind of comes down to like, can you really ever get rid of all toxicity? There's always going to be somebody just having a bad day.
Yeah, and we'll get into that, but all right. Well, we can get into more of that in the discussion, but right now, I think we're gonna be moving on to Ryan. So, Ryan, tell me about this name of this game that I've already forgotten, and how it works, and why you decided to bring it today. You got 5 minutes on the clock. Let's go.
Oh boy. I chose Vermintide 2. It's a first-person co-op action game, released, at least for the PC, in March of this year, and it takes place in the Warhammer universe. But before I get too far into the kind of talking about the my topic, I kind of want to talk about the struggle I had with finding it. Before I had a lot of difficulty finding something interesting to bring to this week's episode. And my only interesting thought was that I might try and find a game, an online multiplayer game where I've had like a net positive experience with the multiplayer. And I thought it wouldn't be that difficult, but it turns out it is very difficult. It turns out that most multiplayer games, even multiplayer games that I love, like even Overwatch, I've had like a lot of toxic experiences.
don't get me wrong, Overwatch can be very toxic.
Yeah. So I'm kind of trying to going back into it, like going through all these games I've played throughout the years, and I only really came up with like 2 or 3. One of which was Vermintide 2, the other one being PlanetSide 2. Mm-hmm. And Vermintide 2 just slightly won out because I played it more recently. Like PlanetSide 2 I played maybe about 2 years ago, but had a lot of fun, and I thought the community was very cool. But even in Vermintide 2, which I thought the community was very fun overall, there was still like a couple instances of like people kind of getting angry, or maybe not necessarily at myself, but you can see it at other people because you kind of see what people are chatting about, and there is like people can't speak over it. There is like a team chat function. So occasionally like people would just get upset, but I think for every one of those times there was like a toxic person, there was at least 5 experiences of like somebody being very helpful over chat, like telling where things are, or somebody grabbing a healing item and healing you as opposed to like healing themselves. Like kind of it's at least to me seemed like a very friendly community.
Right.
So kind of getting back into the game to itself, basically the Warhammer version of Left 4 Dead, if that makes any sense. Warhammer is actually very similar to, or at least in a lot of ways, kind of similar to just like a generic fantasy world. It has a lot of lore and everything, but it shares a lot of similarities with things like Warcraft, because actually Warcraft is kind of a ripoff of Warhammer, but it's basically this kind of like novel fantasy, kind of high fantasy stuff. You and 3 allies wade through hordes of enemies, mostly, as you get from the name, vermin. Like they're the, what are they called? I can't remember their name, but basically giant humanoid rats. You fight through hordes of like kind of like regular rats. There are certain special enemies. There's like the assassin rat, which will like jump on you and claw at you. There is a hook rat, I think or a clan rat, that'll actually like grab you with a pole and kind of like hang you. They have a bunch of that. They all kind of are very similar to things you've probably seen in Left 4 Dead. Like they have a lot of special zombies. And they also have like boss zombies that you and like kind of mini bosses and level bosses for some of these missions that you go on to. Each level has certain objective, and there's smaller optional collectibles that increase the difficulty and the reward at the end of the mission. And at the end of each mission, you do receive loot boxes, and that's the main way. Oh, and they increase in value depending on a little bit on luck. There is like a luck kind of thing. There's like a random like a random die roll that kind of gives you a little bit of extra little oomph, little juice. But a lot of it's based upon the collectibles you find and how you are able to complete the mission. If everybody survives at the end, you get like a little bonus. But also if you get all these collectibles, one is tomes, which replace, I want to say, your potion slot, which is kind of useful, but not, it's not like game breaking. And then the other one is a grimoires. Yeah, grimoires. So there's another one called a grimoire, and that actually takes the place of bomb. You have bombs you can use, like they're one-time use items, but it also has a side effect of reducing your health by 30%.
As bombs do.
Yeah. Well, no, the grimoire is like a book that you can pick up and it replaces that slot.
As books do.
As books do. And so it kind of lets you kind of increase the difficulty a little bit through some of your actions, and like it's pretty well known where a lot of these places are, and a lot of the more veteran players will show you. But this is also the main form of advancement. Those loot boxes, each time you actually beat a level, you come back, you get a loot box. Depending on the little extras that you grab, it increases the rarity of the stuff inside the loot box. And then when you open up the loot box, it's usually a bunch of like charms or weapons that kind of very incrementally, ever so slightly better than the equipment that you have now. And that's kind of the main way you advance and kind of push forward in different and gain in power. So, and I think that's one of you also gain levels overall that you can unlock certain perks with. Mm-hmm. But I think the key concept of the game, or one of the key concepts of the game, is that enemies and pickups are kind of random. There is a director, that I think as they call it, that kind of switches things up every time you play. So even though there's only about 4, I think there's maybe 10 or 12 total levels you can play. And that might be a high number for Vermintide. I think they just added some. Each time will be a little different. Enemies will be placed differently. Types of enemies will be different. And I think that's kind of one of the reasons that it's a little less toxic, actually. Because the variety. Some games you will, like, blast through no issue. No problem.
How long do the games last?
Depending. I think they're pretty short. I think I want to say about 20, 25 minutes.
Oh, okay.
You can blast through a level. I mean, it depends on the level. They have some ones that are longer than others, and if you're really floundering, it can take a while. But I think that kind of helps because there are some levels that you can just blast through no matter who you're playing with. And there's other levels, no matter who you're playing with, you're just going to get destroyed. And they may have fixed that a little bit. I haven't played in the past month or so.
Okay.
And they have made a lot of changes. But there was actually like a lot of complaints that sometimes if you're playing really well, the director would throw you a curveball that is just impossible to handle. And I think that kind of offset a little bit of toxicity because people knew it was the game, or at least they could blame it on the game. And not their team.
And not the
other.
It's like,
oh.
So the game intentionally fucks you over so you don't get angry at other people fucking you over.
Well, I don't know if it's intentional or not, but I think it's kind of what it is. Because I would often find myself, like, there's a few times I think we lost a game based on, like, somebody running ahead and not paying attention. But there's also, I think, a lot more of those games were lost, like, they were lost at the beginning. You'd start attacking this boss, this like kind of level boss, and you weren't just doing 0 damage to it. And every time it hit you, it would do a massive amount, just downing everybody. I think that kind of made it a little less toxic overall. I also think the reward system, the loot boxes, if you miss out on a loot box, it's not going to really greatly affect your day. Because all the changes are just so tinily incremental that if you miss out on a box, boohoo, it'll be fine though, because you can just get back into it and play and beat another one in, 20 minutes. And I think, it's going back to it. And I think the missions are really short. So I think all those things kind of come together. I'm sure some people have had toxic experiences with a game. And I've had a few, like, toxic experiences, but I wouldn't rate it overall toxic. Right. I think a lot of these things, small little things, make it very fun. And they kind of give people excuses not to blame each other. Yeah. But they give it to blame the game. So, I mean, that's why I kind of want to bring it. A lot of the experiences I had with just random people, they were also very helpful all the time. A lot of the more experienced players that were playing the beta that knew the location of all these like tomes and grimoires and like little items and where the healing was at, they would willingly give up that information and show everybody where it was. People would use their healing items on you because I think it really instilled more teamwork because you can't survive in the game by yourself. At least most people can. Right. A lot of the special zombies are like instant takedown. You need somebody to help you, otherwise you're dead. So
all right.
I think it was a game that really bred not friendship, but teamwork at least.
Yeah. All right, well, that's interesting. I think that'll be fun to compare a little bit more with that and our other games, just to kind of parse out why it is that the fandom for, what is it called? Vermintide? Is that right?
Vermintide 2.
Vermintide or Tine?
Tide. Like the tide of vermin.
Of vermin. That makes sense. All right. Yeah, we'll be able to parse out the kind of differences in the fandoms in the discussion, which I think we're going to be moving into right about now. All right, boys, with our topic and both of those domains summarized, now we're going to be moving on to the discussion portion of this podcast. And I'm not really sure where to start this, because with my very, very little knowledge of MOBAs and Dota in particular, just another little disclaimer. I'm going to have a hard time steering this discussion to a meaningful place, but let's just start off and try to kind of compare the differences between these games, and particularly let's focus on Vermintide a little bit, so that we can kind of try to parse out what it is about that game that maybe makes the fandom a little bit toxic, and then maybe that'll be a little bit revealing about the elements of Dota and Overwatch that contribute to the toxicity. Something that I do kind of want to start to talk about is the between these games is the match length. Something that I found kind of frustrating about Dota personally is the fact that the matches last like 45 minutes. I could see how that would definitely breed a sort of toxic fandom, because then, like, if you're encouraged to not just rage quit out of a game, and if it's like maybe apparent pretty early on that you're stuck with like kind of new people, then I could see it being extremely frustrating to have to be in that game for another 40 minutes. I'd imagine that, like, if you're really with a bad team and you're up against a really good team, then it might, be a little bit shorter than that. But I don't know, like, is there something about, like, Overwatch has comparably rather short matches, but there's still sort of this toxicity in the fandom. But do you think it's lessened by the fact that, like, it doesn't last as long?
Yeah. I do. Or if nothing else, you can try to make up for Lost Ground and further matches, because you can play like 3 more Overwatch games.
Right.
In the time it takes to do one Dota game. And like part of like what contributes so much to toxicity is that in like ranked games, in some of the seasons, it takes losing makes you lose so much more than winning. And that can like piss people off.
Just because I'm kind of a noob here, explain to me like the significance of the ranking system. Does it just contribute to who you're matched against, or is it just like a?
It's how you prove to other people you're better than them.
Yeah. It's like a like an actual like ladder which you're like trying to climb up and show everyone that you're the best and you have the biggest dick. Or whatever.
Yeah. Excuse me, I am nationally ranked as Soldier 76.
Is that true? Are you?
No, I wasn't. All right, I was in some top percentiles for Soldier 76 when I played, but I do think, especially when I played ranked games, I think my personal toxicity increased by a lot. Because even though there's literally nothing on the line, it's fake internet points that are useless in every other way except to tell your friends that you're a little bit better than them. And I would find myself getting so frustrated at a loss. But I think on the other end, if you won, you felt so good.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, like, I don't want to, I don't want to say like it shouldn't matter to people, because like, I think it's like, a significant thing that people, do as their job, as like an entertainment thing. So like esports in general, and I'm not saying that you were doing this, but just to put this out there for the listeners, I don't want to like craft any sort of narrative that I don't think that esports are like legitimate or anything like that, because I think that they're like, people are into different things. It's not the kind of thing that I'm personally into, right? But like, I'm also not into real sports. So, but I think that it is the same kind of thing where it's just like, people, I think, have this sort of perception about esports that it's like, oh, it's because it's a video game, that means that you shouldn't like care about the outcome of things, blah, 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 when somehow it's okay to care about the outcome of like sports games, which is effectively like the same thing. But like in some of these video games, you're kind of dealing with more like bizarre premises and like nerdier things in general, because like that's possible, right? Because like why would we have football players dressed like orcs or anything like that? So like I think people kind of look down on it because of that. But I know I don't want to necessarily take a stance. I think both have their ups and downsides. Like I think that people definitely get addicted to esports, and it's a thing that's perhaps easier to get addicted to. I would say I probably am a bit of a sports hater, but I think that I have equal resentment towards esports and real sports as concepts.
Yeah, although like we've been talking about toxicity in terms of like players like getting angry about losing, blaming others about doing badly and that kind of stuff, but toxicity can also take the form of old-fashioned harassment, just like you hear a woman's voice and suddenly she's getting all these threats, people coming onto her when she just doesn't want people to come onto her. If anyone...
Yeah, it's like the sort of people... I mean, I don't want to generalize, but like the fact that so many... You get like a pretty diverse population of the world playing on this game in some regard. Like, you get a lot of people that are not inside your normal niche, and it's kind of, like, revealing about, like, the actual makeup of people in the world, in a sort of sense, you know what I mean?
A lot of 13-year-old boys screaming the N-word on voice chat.
Yeah.
That lovely stuff.
So it's like, I guess what I'm saying is, like, when you might be doing an activity in person as opposed to online play, right? You're generally... if not choosing the exact people you're with, you're at least like part of a community that you're familiar with. Whereas like the communities of these games can come from pretty much all over, and the makeup of like, people's like prejudice and shit in the world will kind of like represent itself in a sort of unique way that ends up feeding
but it can
itself.
it can manifest in some annoying ways. Like,
oh yeah, I'm not defending it. I'm trying to explain its existence.
No. Like, I just wanted to like give an example, like how like people who like main a character named Mercy, For the record, Mercy's like this character who she's a woman. She heals people, and like what'll very often happen is that she is whoever plays Mercy is the one who gets blamed for all the bullshit, and because of the stereotype that women play Mercy more often than everyone else. So, you'll often hear people typing in chat or screaming in their mics. Why do they all play Mercy? Why do they all suck at Mercy and that kind of bullshit,
Yeah. It's a real downer.
I guess, I want to sort of talk about, do we think that, the problem is bred by the games themselves necessarily? Or is it just, kind of the toxic nature of humanity that these games are revealing?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, no, here's the thing. The mechanics of the game can bring out the worst in people, but sometimes it's less about bringing out the worst in people and making sure the worst in people doesn't show up to hurt other people,
Yeah. No,
and I'm not sure of the solution to that, other than do what Nintendo does and just not let anyone talk to anyone, which is
make it so complicated to get voice chat that nobody does it. You have to download an app, you have to connect your phone.
Like with Splatoon, I don't blame Nintendo for not having voice chat in their games, because honestly, people are absolute shits,
awful.
And I would not want Splatoon ruined by that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I think that's the thing in general that makes me not really interested in playing online multiplayer games, is that I'm generally a more casual person when it comes to gaming, and it's hard to go on any sort of thing where you're dealing with other people in the world, because if you're dealing with other people in the world, that means that you definitely are dealing with, in my case especially, you're definitely dealing with someone who's infinitely more into it than you are.
Yeah.
So it's it makes it a difficult thing to be in that environment, because it's well, I can't really have fun here, or I'll either feel I'm just getting people angry at me, or I'm ruining things for my team and bringing down a game and making it not enjoyable for other people. It's just there's always going to be someone who's more into it than I am, and that person's going to be much better at the game. So how...
I think a big part of it is the frustration of a loss, but I think it's also just the general kind of internet breakdown of social norms.
Yeah.
The anonymity of just being a character on Overwatch or being a character on Dota and just having a screen name that nobody can connect to you. It does give freedom. I'm sure there are people that have perfectly normal 9-to-5 jobs, interact with all sorts of people every day, are completely agreeable, and the second you put them in front of a computer,
it's N-word this and N-word that.
Yeah, exactly. So I think that's a big part of it.
As a wise man and co-creator of this podcast once said, anonymity does terrible things to people.
Yeah. I think if on Dota, if people clicked on your profile and it came up with your actual picture, your name, and your home address, people would be a lot less likely to be mean to each other.
Your home address, or they'd be a lot more likely to be criminal towards you. Yeah.
Or you'd get more stalkers,
Yeah, I mean, it opens up a lot of, breach of privacy, but, I mean, it would solve the problem.
It would just cause other problems.
It's like releasing mongooses in a Kmart to kill all the snakes. What are you going to do to kill all the mongooses afterwards?
Release tigers, duh.
Just escalating problems.
I'm not really sure how I want to do this, but I do want to pull this back closer to Dota, I think. Dota and MOBAs in general, right? I think kind of have more toxic fandom than a lot of other games do. I would say they're pretty famous for this toxic fandom. So what is it about these type of games? Is it because because in Overwatch you also have this team makeup, right? Is that something that you have in Vermintide as well?
Yeah, you can pick a couple different. There's 5 characters. There's four people that you can play at a time. There's 5 characters, and each one of them has 3 or 4 different archetypes. So you can really mix it up. There's some that are more tanky. There are some that are more ranged.
Right, but is it a big deal if you don't have all of the niches filled on your team?
Team composition definitely does matter, because everybody's ranged and really squishy, low health type of people. You'll die very quickly unless you're playing with very good people. But you want people, there are certain roles you definitely want filled. But I mean, since you can only choose from 5 different characters and you're 4 people playing, like
you're probably going to have those. Yeah, that's fair, because that's something about.
Yeah, although do you get like a lot of people who like really want to play one particular character and like throw a tantrum if they don't get it? Because like so often, like in Overwatch, you'll have like someone like takes like Genji or something, and like the person's like, I main Genji, I refuse to play if I ain't Genji, and then like deliberately throws the match.
Oh, yeah.
if they don't have their way, yeah.
There was, like, a little bit of it. There was definitely people who were like, hey, would you mind switching? Like, I'm much better. And, like, I never really had an issue changing out because the mechanics are a little bit different for each one, but for the most part, they all play very similarly. I mean, basically, it's point and click. There is some kind of, like, intuitive kind of nature. If you haven't played before, it might be tricky, but they're all kind of pretty straightforward characters to play.
So bringing that back to Dota, and I know that this is like a thing with League of Legends too, so it seems like it's a pretty big MOBA thing, but like there are a shit ton of characters in those games. So it makes the whole, I think, apparatus of like the team makeup very complicated, because not only are there like, you could probably categorize the characters into like the different niches that they filled, right? But like different ones probably work better with different, team makeups, right? Like that, I think that might even be something that like adds to that issue, because if someone has like one specific character, not just like a character archetype, but one specific character that they're like super intent on maining and only playing as that character, that could really mess up like the rest of the team. Whereas it sounds like, Vermintide, if you only have like 4 characters that you can pick from, right? Like, how could you not kind of get familiar with all of those, at least to an extent, right? It's like, when you play Super Smash Brothers, like, you got like 20 characters, you've played them all at least once or twice. But if you have like 50 characters, as is the case with like Dota 2 and like League of Legends, then like,
Or like in, Smash Ultimate's like got over 60s. You can't main everyone. You gotta get good with 1 or 2 or 3,
exactly.
But like you can't get good at like 7 people or get good at all of them,
Exactly, yeah.
Right. So then like if you're playing a game where other people are wanting to be that character, or a character that just wouldn't jive well with that character, or we didn't really mention this in the summary, but there is like a banning feature at the beginning of the match where players can like ban certain characters, which I think is kind of an interesting mechanic, but like that might also breed to the toxicity of it, right? Is that like it creates more sort of ways that people can shift blame off of themselves for failures in these matches, Whereas
onto
like
other people, he took my character.
Right, like he took my character, or this guy banned my character, so how could I have done well? It's like it's all about it. I think like a lot of the toxicity is about the blame shifting.
It's all about Hanzo. You can blame everything on fucking Hanzo.
Yeah, I do see that. And a lot of it also has to do, like, I think for specific characters in Dota. And there is, like, you can kind of look back onto it. It could really make a difference who plays it, because some characters have a very low kind of skill ceiling, which means anybody can play them pretty well, or most people can play them pretty well.
Yeah,
and there's other characters that have a very high skill healing that if you play it all the time, get super good at it, you're very tricky to play against, and you've devoted hours of your life playing this character, and some noob just takes it from you.
You'd be kind of helpless if you're just starting out playing the game.
Yeah.
Yeah, see, that was an experience that we had, right? Is that we were playing the game, and like both of the matches that I played, I picked characters purely based on their aesthetics, which turns out were characters with a very high skill ceiling. So I felt like I really wasn't doing anything, because like my characters, like I did their effects or whatever, and I just like didn't see what the outcome of it was, because they're very like situational strategies that were going along with them. So it's like it's kind of an interesting, I think that probably there could have been something in the game that helped explain that a little bit more, like categorizing them in terms of like kind of player level, because if you're just going into this game and you're looking at this cast of like 30 to 50 characters, you're probably just going to pick something random based on its aesthetics, not necessarily like its usefulness in the game, because you don't know it yet, right?
Yeah. Exactly.
So it's sort of like something that I think could have been
like I
helpful.
Think there
and I don't
might
know
have been
if
something like that, but it's so buried in all this like information that like it's hard to parse out what you need and what you need to know.
That's true.
Yeah.
I do kind of have a hot take on MOBAs, and that MOBAs aren't fun. Winning. No, hear me out. The act of playing a MOBA is not actually fun. The act of beating other people at something that requires skill is fun. And I think that's where a lot of toxicity actually comes from. Because otherwise, it's miserable. You're just getting...
Right.
It's like going to the school... It's like going to your, like... Going back to, like, elementary school and, like, playing kickball with like people in class. If all you do is get your ass kicked at kickball, you're not actually having fun. You're just miserable because you're losing to all your teammates or all your like schoolmates, and all they can think about is how badly they kicked your ass, and all you can think about is how they kicked your ass. Like
right, like there are some games, and this might be like a competitive human nature thing in general, or gamer nature or whatever, right? But like I think that there are some games that regardless of whether you win or lose, you can have a good time playing. And I'm not going to say that no one has a good time playing Dota, right? But I think that there is something to that like, is the thing itself fun, or is beating other people at it what's fun? You know what I mean?
Because when I played League, when I won, it felt fucking amazing. It was the best thing ever. Like, oh, we're so much better than them. Oh, we're so good. But when we lost, it wasn't fun. When I would look back on those matches, I did not have fun when I lost. It wasn't like a close... I think also for a lot of time in like League of Legends and Dota, it's not that it's like they eked out a win. It's usually it's like a snowball running downhill. By the time it reaches the bottom, it's just this huge, massive fucking thing that just takes you out.
It's like when you play Monopoly. Like, at a certain point in the game, you know who's going to win, but there's that part of you that wants to, like... But, you don't get penalized for quitting a game of Monopoly and being like, okay, we know who's winning, can we just stop, right? But, like, in these games, like, you have to drag it out to the very end of it, and this is, like, going back to that, like, the mechanic of, like, the more times you die, the longer it takes. Like, once you know you're losing a game, I understand the people who just rage quit, because, like, otherwise, what are you fucking doing there? Yeah. Like, if you're losing a game... Like, you're barely playing anymore at that point, So it's like, even if it's like the mechanics of the game with this, like, thing that makes the, death last longer every time you die. It's like, you're actually no longer playing the game by the point that you know that you're losing. So, like, it definitely fuels that sort of rage thing where it's just like, well, what the fuck am I doing this for? Whereas in some other games, like, even if you know that you're going to lose at the end of the game, right, you can still contribute to the game throughout the rest of it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Honestly...
Sorry, what were you going to say, Chowdhury?
I mean, it's past. It was going to relate to Monopoly, but...
Oh, okay.
Okay, but I do have a new thing
Chowdhury
to
hates
say.
Monopoly.
Honestly, I think the least toxic multiplayer game I have ever played, Splatoon 2. 1, nobody can communicate with each other in the first place. But 2, the tide of the game can turn. 3, even if you miss shots on people and aren't getting kills, you're still contributing because all shots contribute to the goal of the game, which is to ink the most turf. So ultimately,
that's true.
So like no matter what happens, you are always contributing, so long as you are firing your gun. So
right, and it's also like in a game like that, it's perhaps a little bit like more difficult to keep track of which team is really like winning or losing at the end of it. So it's kind of like you do your best and then you find out afterwards. I don't know that much about Splatoon. That might be totally inaccurate.
That's actually very accurate. You don't have a good idea on who's winning until until the very end when they show that number up on screen.
Right, which is like, whereas something like Dota or even bringing it back to fucking Monopoly, right? Like, like you can know pretty, like there are very few close matches, right? Like, it's about like getting to a point where you can steamroll the other team, and like in some cases it's really satisfying to steamroll the other team. But if you're the other team, like that definitely can breed some sort of like resentment and toxic behavior, which is like, like the kind of thing that I don't like about like those kind of games. Like, I feel like online multiplayer games like that, I'm fucking going strong with this Monopoly metaphor because it's helping me understand it. But like at least when I play Monopoly, I stop having fun once you know who's winning, regardless of whether it's me or not. Because if it's not me, I'm just like, can we just fucking stop? And if it is me, I'm just like, sorry guys, but I'm gonna do this, you know?
That's board games.
Whereas like the anonymity of these video games makes that not much of a thing. Like you want to be like pounding your chest and being like, yeah, get fucked. We're like running you over because you're not playing with your immediate family members who you're gonna have to deal with for the rest of the day.
Like back to Monopoly, the alternative thing that could happen is you're like, okay, we know who's winning. Can I just give up and call it a day?
Right.
And then they're like, no, we gotta see this we gotta go to the end.
And I'm like, we gotta do it.
And it's like, no, I don't. I give up. And it's like, you're a sore loser. I'm not. I acknowledge that you win. Just let me end it. I'm done. Similar thing with chess, I guess, but mostly Monopoly.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I think that there are some games where it's like, I personally do prefer to play out Monopoly to the end of it, but like,
no. I hate Monopoly. Like, I have never gotten to the end of that game.
Very solid. Well, as much as I'd love to keep talking about Monopoly, I think that we're going to have to be transitioning pretty soon.
Episode 81, Monopoly, How to Win It Right.
Right? Yeah, we're going to have, like the actual game with Monopoly, we're going to have to cut our conversation on Monopoly a little bit short for the sake of time and mental stability. All right, well, this would be the point in the discussion where we would be reading listener questions. We did not get any for this episode, partially due to the fact that we were recording this a bit early, and I believe the post was only made 2 days ago. So it's our bad a little bit. So if you submitted a question for this topic, it was after recording. I'm so sorry.
But yeah, really, would we be able to answer your question?
Probably not. We don't have a lot of good knowledge of it. Chowdhury, you bring up a good point. But if you do want to comment your own questions and have it read on the podcast so we can, talk about some outside perspectives to kind of break away from the normal conversation, we do make posts every Monday on Facebook and Twitter as well for the episode we'll be recording next week. So, yeah, do that. It's really fun to get listener questions, and it provides a little bit of, diversity in the discussion. But, yeah. I don't know. I think we're ready to move on to the ratings, right, boys?
Yeah.
Oh, boy.
All right. Thank you guys for a fucking airtight discussion right there that definitely was filled with knowledge, in-depth knowledge from all three of us. Now we're going to be moving on.
Next time when we get like a user or a listener, not a listener question, but like a listener topic, can we just be like, nah. You're choosing another one.
Oh, God. You know what? I've been wanting to host the listener episode for a while, and I write the schedule, for those of you who don't know. So I purposely set it up so that I would be hosting this episode, right? It could either be me or Pat, because whoever's in the previous episode has to be hosting the next episode. Or I guess whoever's hosting an episode has to have been in the previous episode more accurately. And that was Pat, Keenan, and I, and Keenan was the host last episode. So I set it up so I would be hosting this episode, right? And I'm like, this should go well. The last 3 listener topic selections were all great fucking things, like, an awful fucking Mortal Kombat movie, which is totally my jive, Black Panther, which is fucking great, and Dear White People, which I have not seen, but I've heard is very good. And I'm like, all right, I'm excited for this. And Colin texts me, is like, so you're going to be talking about Dota 2. And I'm like, are you fucking kidding me right now?
That we're all inept about.
Also, fun fact, I have been in every listener pick episode in some form or another.
Yeah, you won't be in the next one. That was an oversight on my part, but yeah. So that's my little rant. I'm not into MOBAs. I'm not a competitive gamer. I'm barely a gamer at all. So this was a little rough for me. But I think that we had some fun talking about it.
Judging Dota players.
Now we are in the ratings, and each of our representatives are going to rate the topic. Whew, I hope we know where this is going. A scale from 1 to 5 towers? Yeah. That's a thing that exists in this game. 1 to 5 towers. We'll go with that. Chowder, let's hear it. You know what? We'll go for it.
All right, I'm gonna start this off with a statement I know will piss off Dota players. Okay, tea's about to be spilled. All right. I'd rather be playing League of Legends. Mic drop.
All right, 1 to 5 towers. Chowder, how you feeling? How many towers does Dota 2 get?
I give it 1.5 towers.
Right.
I did not enjoy my time with the game, and I understand. And one reason for that is MOBAs aren't my thing. I can't really get into them. But like, I feel like the way the controls are in a MOBA feel very awkward to me. The game is very ugly. Like, it doesn't look good. The character designs are very generic and uninspired.
Yeah. I mean, it's all a subjective thing, but I must say it does not fucking look like 20 gigabytes worth of graphics.
The penguin looking man. What about
penguin looking man?
Cute.
Nobody's cute in that game. Everyone's like these. Yeah. Every female character is the same, like, waifish figure, waifish fantasy figure,
Yeah.
I mean, League runs into that same problem too, but Overwatch doesn't. There's a large variety of female characters who embody different archetypes, but like, every woman in that game is either an assassin lady or a very scantily clad magic user or something.
They can be magic users. They can
or
be
a very
fucking
scantily clad fucking centaur.
Yeah. Wasn't even a centaur. Well, her bottom half was a deer.
Oh yeah, so I don't know what that makes her, but
armor just gets in the way of all of the magic and bows and arrows and swords they have to swing. So obviously,
and like, yeah, mostly just those character designs. I don't like those character designs. Like League of Legends has like a lot. I don't really care for League of Legends either, but they have like this really nice art style and these good character designs and good voice acting that's really pleasant. Overwatch.
They put effort into the backstory too.
Yeah,
a lot of backstory and lore. You can get into the lore
exactly. And Overwatch. The reason I even got into that is because I dig the characters so much. So
the Overwatch has a lot of fun kind of lore stuff, which is like sad to me because I wish it was like more of a thing that was in the game, because that might be something that I'd actually be like interested in otherwise. But because like I enjoyed the skits that you had us watch, like for that whatever episode, that 12, like those were
very well done skits.
Like I've said this before about League of Legends, and I'll say it again. I couldn't care for the game of League of Legends, but like the lore, if they like made spin-off games about those characters, or like had like a actual in-depth comic beyond just the small bite-sized stuff they release, I'd be all over that. But the MOBA itself, so there you go, my score, 1.5 towers.
1.5 towers. Ryan, hit me with it. How many towers would you give Dota 2?
Oh boy. Well, before I'm going to preface my score, because I do have a story, not with Dota, but with a very similar game, League of Legends. This is right before I uninstalled it from my computer and never looked back until about a year and a half later when I played it a little bit more. So I was trying out a new character on League of Legends. This was back when I was in college, so it was a few years back. I was trying out a new character. It was supposed to be a very hard character. I thought I was good at the game. I obviously was not good at the game, but you got to give it a try. So I was trying this character. I was failing doing well at this character. I couldn't handle him at all. I didn't understand how to like position him, and I didn't understand what his strengths and weaknesses were, and I didn't really fully research the character beforehand to understand like what I needed to buy to support him. And we, of course, my side lost. I had a very terrible score. And a lot of the time when the game ends and things are kind of being tallied up and it shows like, oh, you had this many kills, this many deaths, this is what happened, blah, blah, blah. People tend to chat like, oh, good luck, or like, it was a great game or good game, had a lot of fun. And I said, oh, yeah, GG, good game. And then I was like, oh, man, I really fucked up this one. And then for some reason, the people on the other team started being mean to me. like being, oh yeah, you're like being actually very cruel, like
Wow.
calling me a bunch of different names,
as happens in the environment.
Yeah, and I was like, why? Like, what do you care? Then I was like, oh, what do you care? You won. Like, you should be happy. Why are you angry at some kid that lost? And they didn't really know how to answer it. So what they did instead was like, oh, why don't you tell us where we live so we can come find you and kill you? And I was like, okay,
Jesus
Oh, boy.
Christ.
what is up with this? And at that point, I was like, okay, well, this game, I was like feeling really shitty because I mean, obviously, I lost.
I mean, someone just gave you a death threat. You have every right to be feel shitty.
And it was
Yeah.
like, I'd heard that stuff happened occasionally, but I'd never realized it happened, like, I thought that was, like, something people joked about. So I was like, okay. And then I just uninstalled. Like, I felt so weird about the game for the longest time. I tried to get back into it, but my heart wasn't really into it.
That's reasonable, yeah.
And then I played Dota a couple months ago with a friend of mine. And I kind of tried to get into it, but I didn't even want to try.
Does it feel the same as League? Because, like, my understanding of the games is, like, I really don't understand the significant differences between the games.
I mean, League of Legends was basically a ripoff of Dota. I mean, if you can call a mod of a game a ripoff.
Yeah.
Well, like, yeah, they're pretty much the same game or same style of game, but like League of Legends has like more developed mechanics because they have more characters that do more different stuff. So
That's fair.
Exactly. There's
Alright.
some differences. But yeah, so like I played this with a friend. I wasn't really into it. I played it again. I remember a lot of the stuff they were trying to like teach me. And it's like enjoyable. Even I was starting to kind of get into it a little bit, the winning aspect of it, of like trying and like succeeding and showing people how to do stuff. And like it can be fun when you're winning, but when you're losing, and it can to some extent be fun when you lose as long as you have a reasonable excuse. Like I wasn't very angry like we lost a bunch of games because I figured we were going to lose a bunch of games. I haven't played in forever. You guys have like never played. We're playing a bunch of random people. But like I feel like if we had played for a little bit longer and I had like started to feel like you guys had learned some stuff when we started to lose, I feel like I probably would have gotten angry.
Yeah.
So I'm going to rate it one tower.
Yeah.
It's bad. Like I completely understand why people would get into it and have fun with it, but at least for me, it's a super downer and just makes me think of like random internet strangers threatening to murder me.
That's totally fair.
Which is hilarious because I'm like a 6'4", like very burly man, and it would be hilarious for some 13-year-old to attempt to attack me. But like, it's still like psychologically, it's like, why do I put myself through this?
All right. Well, normally the host is the person who picks the topic, so they wouldn't throw in any sort of opinion about it because obviously they're into it to some regard because they brought it. But since we are dealing with our listener pick here, I'm being forced to play this game just as much as these two are. So I think I'll also throw in my little opinion. I think I kind of agree with the general opinion of it. I would give Dota about 1 tower out of 5. And I do understand like people who are more like esports inclined. I understand that people get into this game and it is actually like pretty highly rated. I think like something I read on Wikipedia said that it was like some website was even considering it to be like one of the greatest games of all time, which is like I don't understand that, but it's like it's not my thing, you know? Like, so we are, I would like to, put the disclaimer up again that we are all speaking at this from the perspective of people who are just not into this sort of thing.
MOBA's a lot like heroin. It's a roller coaster ride. So I think we had yet to get, like, if you guys probably if we like really gone into this and we had all gotten it, like, played for a couple of days, we'd be up at that peak of that roller coaster, like, traveling down, having fun.
I don't know,
then,
I hate roller coasters too.
I have like a similar like inability to get into like MMORPGs like World of Warcraft and stuff. Like,
I just don't like dealing with other people, especially like anonymous people. Honestly. In like these sorts of games, it's just like not my job because like I said before, like there's always going to be someone who's more into it than I am, so it's like they're always going to be better, and it's just like it doesn't really breed an environment that I'm really capable of having fun in, honestly. Also, like I kind of agree with Chowdhury. I think some of the designs look kind of cool, but a lot of them are pretty generic, and not that interesting to me. Also, all of the names of the characters are fucking stupid as shit.
Right?
Like Enchantress and whatever. And
they're very bland. It's very bland.
Enchantress and Drow Ranger and Axe.
yeah, half of
Don't
them are
forget
named
Axe.
as like classifications, and then the other half have like names, and I'm just like, I don't understand what the setup is of this world, but I haven't looked much into the lore, so I don't know, maybe I shouldn't talk about that.
Guess
but
what weapon Axe uses?
regardless, yeah, Axe, fucking Axe. We're going to be moving on now to the Gold Star student distribution for this episode of the Common Geeking program. And, this was both... I think you both did really well, and I think we had a fun discussion despite the disinterest in the topic at which we were talking from all three of us. But I think you both did make good points. I think we got a little bit more talking points out of Chowder's domain, but that's also admittedly because I was more familiar from the onset with Overwatch than I am with Vermintide, so that's kind of my fault, not Ryan's. But I think that ultimately one of you made a comment that really pushed it over the edge for me, and
it was the
kind of
heroin
stood out.
comment.
It was definitely the heroin comment that Ryan made 2 seconds ago. No, nearing hopefully the end of the discussion. I don't know where it actually landed. Ryan mentioned that
you mean the one about like how it can sometimes like Dota and League, like it's the fun is in beating someone else rather
exactly.
than
Ryan said that the fun is in winning but not in playing, and I think that was pretty insightful. So I think I didn't even say it. I'm doing everything out of order. We're gonna give Ryan is getting the golden pudge.
The golden pudge. I knew you were going to do that, too.
Which, if we didn't explain it, Pudge is a character in one of the only characters that we learned throughout playing, because he killed me about 20 times in the match. So, Ryan, congratulations on your golden pudge.
Soon I will catch up to Pat. It'll only be a matter of time.
Yeah, Pat just passed Colin. Well, I mean, I don't know where we're at now, since there's 2 episodes before this that haven't been recorded yet, but I don't think Colin's in either of them, so... Oh, he is in one of them. He could tie, but Pat's in the other one, so who knows how it's gonna go. But yeah, I think that's gonna about wrap it up. Thank you guys for listening to the Common Geeking program, and thanks to you two for joining me today. My name, again, is Jeff Leavitt. You can find me on Instagram. I've got an Instagram where I do art stuff. It is called Things I Wish Existed, and there's a dot between each word. I don't have that much on there, but it exists. And I've been joined by Chowder and Ryan. Would you guys like to pimp out your own existences?
Hi.
Chowder first?
Yeah,
Hi.
Chowder here, I guess. Yeah, you can find me on...
You guess. We're not sure. He might be Taeemul today.
You can find me on Twitter, at Taeemul Chowdhury. You can see how that's spelled in the description. And, I do art stuff there.
And Ryan?
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter at Ryan_MOSSB, where most of my stuff is about ass-related espionage.
I forgot about that.
Feel free to...
and if you go back to listen to the end of episode 75, he lists all the tweets he's ever made in his entire Twitter career on there, so...
Most of them are very terrible. Not lose my job terrible, but just like dumb.
So yeah, that's been Chowder and Ryan. Next week, our episode will be hosted by Ryan, I believe. Ryan, what are you guys going to be talking about?
We're going to be talking about movies that are so bad they are good, and specifically one of my all-time favorite good bad movies, The Miami Connection.
Fun stuff. This is, I think, about round 3 and or 4 of that general theme, but it's always a fucking blast. So
yeah, we've had like similar episodes, like an episode on Mortal Kombat Annihilation, an episode on Johnny Mnemonic. Oh my god!
I listened to the Johnny Mnemonic in preparation, so I don't retread too much of the same tire. I don't think Miami Connection's going to be very similar.
Speaking of retreading the same tire, we also had an episode on rubber, which is not quite the same theme, but sort of similar feelings towards it. Mostly I just wanted, because you said tread tire, I forgot. It's a movie about a sentient tire, yeah. But anyway, that episode is going to be is going to be airing next Friday on the 28th of September. So look forward to that. Jesus Christ, we're recording this so far in advance. So, in the meantime, be sure to follow us on Facebook and Twitter at Geeking Program. Any engagement such as sharing a post or tagging us is really helpful, but it also will enter you into a raffle, or you can also tweet #CGP, sorry. And this raffle will give you the chance to pick a topic for a future episode, like this highly successful episode about Dota 2.
Yeah,
so
we're not gonna stop you, but best not to ask about MOBAs.
You know what? I tell you, you should tell whoever wins the raffle for this cycle. I think that we'll set up Ryan to do the episode, and you should host and you should make the topic about espionage.
I mean, I wrote the book on that concept, basically.
Exactly. But yeah, apart from that, reviewing us on Apple Podcasts is really, really, really helpful to helping our show grow. It really increases the visibility, and we're still a little bit small, so that would be helpful. And we'll be reading any new reviews on the air. Got some wacky ones in there. Anyway, guys, thank you for listening. Thanks for bearing with us and listening to our jumbled hatred of something that you might beloved. Or if you hate Dota, you're welcome, I guess. But thanks for listening, subscribing, sharing everything, and we will talk to you next week.
Guys, have a good one.
This episode of the Common Geeking Program was hosted by Jeff Leavitt, joined by Taeemul Chowdhury and Ryan Mossbarger. This episode was sponsored by even more coffee. Like, too much. An excessive amount. Like, this is starting to get scary now. The podcast is created and produced by Colin, Ketchen, and Jeff Leavitt. This episode edited by me, Taeemul Chowdhury, and original music by Colin Ketchen. Next week, we'll be talking about the Miami Connection and bad movies. So be sure to read up on that. And thank you for listening to this podcast. Ciao!
How we want to just start this, boy?
Sure,
Let's do it.
But first, let's roll a d20 for luck. Oh, Jesus. That is a natural 1.
Oh, boy.
That sounds about right.